that sort of put me on high alert that, my mum was fighting for her life and I didn't know what to do. A decade ago, she had collapsed at the floor at home and was rushed to the hospital, and she had an aneurysm. She had massive bleeding in the brain with being told that it's a migraine. She was actually dying at this point. So my desperate search to find things that would help my mum led me in different directions.
So I am super excited to chat with Lisa Tamati, as we are going to be talking about a lot of different things: brain injuries, hyperbaric oxygen, maybe touch upon genetic testing. I'm sure a few other fascinating topics.
These plasmalogens are absolutely crucial to life. So if we're low in plasmalogens, we're not going to have good synaptic transmission in our brain. We can have problems with our heart because these plasmalogens are not only in the brain, but elsewhere as well.
How are they administered? And is there a way to test your plasmalogen levels?
Good question.
So I am super excited to chat with Lisa Tamati, as we are going to be talking about a lot of different things: brain injuries, hyperbaric oxygen, maybe touch upon genetic testing. I'm sure a few other fascinating topics. So let me dive into Lisa's impressive bio here. So Lisa Tamati is a globally recognized expert in longevity and health optimization, a trailblazing educator, and a serial entrepreneur. As a former ultra-endurance athlete with over 25 years of experience competing in some of the world's toughest races, Lisa has transformed her passion for peak performance and resilience into a mission to empower others to achieve their full potential in health and longevity. A podcaster for over a decade, Lisa hosts a globally top 200 ranked show in the functional medicine, longevity, and biohacking space, where she interviews world-renowned experts and explores cutting-edge advancements in health. She is also the author of 5 best-selling books, including Relentless, which shares her inspirational journey of overcoming adversity and achieving the seemingly impossible. Lisa's career extends beyond broadcasting and writing. She is the co-founder of the biotech company Avum Labs, dedicated to developing innovative solutions for aging and immune health. She has also founded several other successful ventures, leveraging her expertise to bridge the gap between scientific research and practical applications in wellness. And in addition to her entrepreneurial achievements, Lisa is a sought-after speaker, documentary filmmaker, and former television host, known for her engaging storytelling and ability to simplify complex scientific topics for diverse audiences. Her columns and content focus on empowering individuals to take control of their health through evidence-based strategies, mindset shifts, and practical tools. And Lisa's work embodies a unique blend of personal grit, scientific expertise, and unwavering passion. Whether she's addressing professionals in the biotech industry, coaching athletes, or inspiring everyday individuals, Lisa brings unparalleled energy and insight into every stage. Learn more about her work at www.lisatamati.com. And welcome, Lisa.
Thanks, Dr. Eric. It all sounds good when it's all written on paper, but in reality, just average.
Yeah, no, I mean, and a lot of this I didn't know, and I've listened to some of your podcast episodes, but again, just I didn't know. Yeah, so your podcast over a decade, over 10 years. Yeah. So that's a long time, and yeah, and then a former television host. So I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. So yeah, you've definitely have done a lot, and now we're going to learn even more about your background. So I want you to spend just a few minutes really just telling us, how did you make this, like how did you decide to make that transition, helping others in the health and wellness field? As
you said in the bio, I had a background as an extreme ultra endurance athlete. So I spent 25 years racing all over the planet, doing really long ultra marathons, and the Sahara, Moroccan, the Arabian, the Libyan, the Niger, Jordan, Gobi, Death Valley in the USA a couple of times, ran right through New Zealand at one point for charity, and lots of adventures in the Himalayas and the outback of Australia. And the funny thing was, Eric, is I wasn't very talented as a runner. I was just very bloody minded, and I didn't have a lot of speed, so I went far. So I was just good at getting around obstacles, and finding a way to do the things that I loved, and I loved adventure. And when you spend so many years pushing the absolute boundaries of physical performance and mental endurance, it really teaches you a lot of lessons for life. And you sort of realize that all the limitations that the world puts on you, you can't possibly run through Death Valley in the middle of summer, you can't possibly run across the Sahara, you can't possibly do this, were wrong. And so that sort of gave me a very, a mindset of, just because someone tells me I can't do something doesn't mean it's true. And if I dedicate myself to something, I'll usually find a way to work it out. I might not be very talented, I might be not the most intelligent, I might be not the fastest, but when you have a lot of grit and determination and you're willing to grind things out, that you can achieve a lot of things. And I think having that ultramarathon background and doing expeditions and failing and succeeding and having a lot of experience really sort of set me up for what I'm doing now, which is, in the longevity and health space. And I was thrown into this space because my mum, wonderful mother who'd always supported me through my crazy adventures, a decade ago, she had collapsed at the floor at home and was rushed to the hospital. And she had an aneurysm, and she was misdiagnosed from the get-go. They thought that she just had a migraine, and an aneurysm and a stroke at the same time. She had massive bleeding in the brain. And so we were left there for 6 hours in ED with being told that it's a migraine, and she was actually, dying at this point. And after 6 hours of desperation, I actually rang a friend who was a paramedic because I was getting ignored in ED, and I knew that something was majorly wrong. And she came up and she took one look at Mum, and she knew her, and she said, no, this is deadly serious. And she went and told the doctor to go and get a CT scan, which he finally relented and did. And then it came back that there was blood right throughout the brain, right? And so then they moved, and we had to be shifted to Wellington because we live in a regional area in New Zealand. And that sort of put me on high alert that, my mum was fighting for her life and I didn't know what to do. And I was caught out, if you like, I made a silent prayer to whoever's out there in the universe that if they gave me a second chance and if they saved my mother, if you like, that I would dedicate my life to helping others and to getting her back and doing everything I possibly could. When you're in that moment of desperation and you promise the world in order to, you're just desperate. And so I started to then research. And of course, in that time where she was in critical care down in Wellington and in and out of a coma, there wasn't a heck of a lot I could do because she was in that critical situation. But I started to observe everything. When you're with someone 24/7, basically, and you don't, or, a couple of hours sleep here and there, you pick up things that the doctors aren't picking up necessarily. And I started to have the odd situation where I was missing something, and realizing that I could make an impact. And that, of course, grew over time. After 3 weeks, my mum was out of the critical danger. She'd survived, but she had massive, massive brain damage. So she was like a baby with hardly any higher function, no ability to even sit or put food in her mouth, completely and utterly, brain damaged at age 74. And then they said to me, well, she's never going to have any quality of life again. Put her into an institution and she won't be with us very long. And I'm a fighter. So I'm not accepting that whatsoever. And so my desperate search to find things that would help my mum led me in different directions. The first thing I picked up was that I didn't think she was breathing properly. And I thought she had sleep apnea because I'd done a lot of racing at altitude and I knew the signs of altitude sickness. And I was seeing those signs in my mother. And so I tried to get the doctors to do a sleep apnea assessment and they wouldn't do it. So I smuggled in a consultant one night. It was a friend of the family, and he came into the hospital and we hooked her up to the machines and we did a study, and it came back severe sleep apnea and that she was stopping breathing hundreds of times a night, and she was actually chain stoke breathing, which is not far from not being on this planet. And her stats were down at, 74% oxygen stats, which is really deadly. And so that was my first win, because then I was like, now we got oxygen and we got a CPAP machine onto her. And I started to realize I can make a difference, I can do things, and I just dove further and further and further into the research. One of the things that I came up with was hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I read about the work of a Dr. Harch in America, who's a famous hyperbaric specialist over there. and how much this could help with massive brain injuries. So then I went on a search, like how could I get my mum hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and it wasn't available in my town, except that there was a commercial dive company that did hyperbaric oxygen for their divers. And so I approached this dive company and said, this is my situation, can I please use your chamber as soon as my mum's out of hospital? And these amazing people said, yes, sign a legal waiver and we'll let you come and use the chamber. So that was absolutely amazing of them to do that. And I remember the day we got her out of hospital, and I had a hell of a fight to get her home, by the way, but I won't go into that story. I took her straight down to this factory, this fragile, and in a wheelchair, nobody home, mum, and we put her on a forklift and we stuck her in this big hyperbaric chamber. That was the only way we could get her in. And we did this day after day after day after day, and we did 33 sessions basically back to back with the weekends off. And after that 33 sessions, she started to respond. Now, she didn't just get up and walk, but she started to have a couple of words. She was paralyzed on the right side. Her arms started to move. She started to have a little bit of flicker of intelligence behind her eyes. And I knew that this was working. And I promise I will let you come to word in a second. I'll just finish this story. But she was, after 33 sessions, we lost access to the chamber because it had to be taken off on a contract. And so then I had to, how do I get a hyperbaric chamber? So I mortgaged my house, I bought a hyperbaric chamber, and I stored it in my house. And then I had to work out how to get her into it because she couldn't move, right? She couldn't move on her own. All of these sort of obstacles that we had to overcome, I got her into the chamber, or found a way and worked it out. And then I put her through session after session after session. And in this time, I was also studying about the keto diet and how that affects brain and ketones and different supplements and functional neurology and vestibular systems and everything that I could possibly study in order to stay one step ahead of her in her rehab journey. And slowly, a real grind. But after 2.5 years, to cut a very, very long story short, and I've written a book about this called Relentless, as you mentioned, we got her back to full health again, full power of attorney, full license, full driver's license. You don't get a driver's license unless you're fully there, right? Walking up to 3Ks, 4Ks a day, going to the gym, going out and having an independent life again. And it was thousands and thousands of hours of retraining her brain and working day in, day out. And that taught me an awful lot. So that's how I got into this space, Dr. Eric, to answer your question.
That is some story. So definitely an inspirational story. And just, I mean, when we think about traumatic brain injuries, I mean, this is like obviously really extreme. And I think it's safe to say in most cases, I mean, most people would probably give up. And again, you, like you said, you're relentless. That's one of the names of your books. And just, just an amazing story. So just, I mean, so your mom's doing really good these days.
At this point. And so that was unfortunately only round one. And, as she's gotten older, because that was a decade ago, right? And I got her back to full health, got her back to doing everything again. And then she got hit with brain cancer. And we had another similar experience at the hospital where they believed me that there was anything wrong. And I spent 3 weeks fighting to get an MRI. And when they did finally do an MRI, they found that half of her brain was covered in cancer, probably from the effects of, what she'd been through earlier, who knows. And they said, well, there's weeks to live and there's nothing you can do. She's too old to do any major bone marrow transplants. This was CNS lymphoma. She's unable to take the chemo. She wouldn't survive, blah, blah, blah. And so then I turned my research to cancer and didn't accept that she only had weeks to live and there was nothing I could do. And I started to, luckily through my podcast, I have access to some of the most brilliant minds on the planet, right? This is one of the reasons why you and I do this, I'm sure, because we meet the most incredible people. And I started to study the metabolic approach to cancer and incredible luminaries in this space. And I started to implement as much as I possibly could. And I went and I chased private oncology because our local oncology wouldn't help us. I did advanced genetic testing in regards to cancer, worked out exactly what her particular type of cancer would respond to from a supplement and a chemotherapy and a immunotherapy point of view. And then I threw everything in the mix. I managed to get a mild form of chemo called temozolomide, which showed on her genetic testing that she would respond to. And then I did all the natural approaches. I was just going to go natural, but the thing was we had weeks to live. So I had to sort of go hard on both sides of the fence. And I've now released an audiobook called What Your Oncologist Isn't Telling You, which is an interview series with 21 of those experts, and work a lot with cancer patients, teaching them about that whole side of cancer research that's not well known, and that is beyond what the normal, your oncologist will be an expert in chemos and medications and surgeries and things like that, radiation, but they don't know about this metabolic side of the story. They don't know that your metabolism, sugar feeds cancer, people. Like that's at the very, very basic level, you want to be cutting your carbs out. And then it gets a lot more complicated than that, because you can block different pathways with different drugs, and you can do all sorts of things. Long story short, it took us 12 weeks to get rid of the tumours on the MRI, and we've been free of cancer, touch wood, ever since. You never want to say you're cured, because it's a tricky beast that can always morph and change its metabolism. So I keep very much on my toes. But we're now, 4.5 years into that journey, and she's doing well again. And we've had other issues like, bone fractures and, osteoporosis and hip replacements and things like that. But I think the moral of the story is really that take control of your health. Be preventative in your mindset. Don't outsource your health to any one person, any one doctor. Understand that we have at our fingertips now all of the knowledge of the universe, and even more so now with AI. I didn't have AI a few years ago, but we've got really everything at our fingertips. If we're willing to put in the work, if we're willing to do the hard yards, then you can sometimes, if you've got some way out of the way rare disease, you can very much research that disease and be more of an expert than your doctor will be, because they haven't come across that particular disease. So that, I think, puts the power in our hands to take control of your health. And I know with your story, because you're on my podcast, you were a chiropractor. You became a chiropractor because you had back issues, and then you had this Graves' disease. So now you're a Graves' disease expert, and you've written all of these books, and a thyroid expert. You are a living example of what I'm talking about too, that you're capable of going out and finding out this. And you might say, well, of course, Dr. Eric was already had a medical background. Yes, but I'm sure most people could take control to some degree. Okay, maybe not to the degree that you've done where you've written 3 books on it, but perhaps you can do more for yourself than what you realize. I think that's my gist of my story, really.
Yeah. Well, I had my chiropractor background, but I had no experience with Graves. So I did pretty much what you did. I dove into the research, and there wasn't a whole lot of research about natural approaches for Graves. So some of it I learned at previous seminars. But yeah, I completely understand. You want to take or agree with you. You want to take control of your health regardless of the situation. And can I ask, how long now has it been since the MRIs? You said it took 12 weeks before the tumor was gone on the MRI. How long? So
that's coming up, I think, 3.5 or 4 years, close on 4 years. So, that's 4 years of extra life we've had so far. And she has an extensive protocol, and it changes constantly, and I'm researching constantly to make sure we stay there. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that every cancer patient will get the same results. Every cancer is very different. But I'm also saying never, ever give up. There is hope. My mum was advanced cancer diagnosis. This was not at the beginning of the journey. This was way advanced. And now when I went to the neurologist, her surgeon, brain surgeon, a couple of months ago, he was like, I can't believe she was on my waiting list today. I didn't expect her to be alive. I can't believe she's walking. I can't believe she's talking. I can't believe that you're here. And yes, she's got some disabilities now. She's got hydrocephalus, so she has balance issues. So she has to be supervised now when she's walking because of the water on the brain. And that's why I was at the brain surgeon to see whether he could operate to get a shunt put in to take off the fluid. We've decided against it. We're trying alternative methods. It's too risky to put her through another brain surgery. But that's about the only thing that we haven't managed to get back. And I've seen her brain go from completely gone burgers, not much over vegetative state, to fully there after the aneurysm, and then losing her again fully in the brain cancer journey, and then getting her back, and then losing her again when she's had different infections, like cognitively losing her, like she's not able to talk, she's not able to do anything, she's not there, and then bringing her back, and again and again and again. And I've seen what the brain can overcome. And I work a lot with people with dementia and Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative diseases, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, and that type of thing. And a lot of people, when they get these diagnoses, they think it's a death sentence and it's the end of the road and there's only drugs and that will just delay things. And it could not be further from the truth. And I've done, again, extensive interviews with experts from, the likes of Dr. Dale Bredesen to Dr. Diane Goodenow to Dr. Elizabeth Yerth, to many of these experts in brain rehabilitation. And we can do so much. And we can see a lot of things coming, like Alzheimer's and dementia. We can see it coming years ahead, and we can do something very early on in the piece. It's a lot easier. And if it's later on in the piece, there's still hope. So I often get accused of giving people false hope. I see it the other way round. I don't like it when people take away people's hope, because for me, life is binary. You're either alive or you're dead. And if you're alive, fight. For me, it's sort of that black and white. If the person wants to fight, however, if they are wanting to and they have a loved one that's willing to support them or whatever the case is, if they don't want to, then that's a different story. But if they want to fight, never give up. There's a chance, even if it's a small chance. The other thing is that medical knowledge is doubling every 79 days now, apparently, according to some amazing statisticians. That means that what used to take 100 years to double, in our medical knowledge, is now doubling every 79 days. So there may not be a cure for what you have right now, but there may be next month, and there may be somebody in the world who's got the answer for you. You just don't know about it. Your local doctor doesn't know about it. Your country doesn't know about it, but you might be able to get it and you might be able to access it. So never underestimate when you're looking for things that there could be answers out there that just are not on your everyday street corner. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I agree with dementia. So obviously I agree with you that if you address it earlier, there's greater chance of getting good results. But so you also said, even if someone's advanced, there's still hope. So if someone has had dementia, Alzheimer's for 10, 15 years, is it possible to would you say completely reverse that? Or is it just really just trying to maintain it, preventing it from getting worse, or maybe just reversing some of it?
Yeah, there's a point of no return for sure. There's maybe, but having seen my mum's brain go from completely, and back to full function again and again and again and again over 10 years, most people have given up way before that they could have done something. And usually we can get people at least reversed part of the way. We may not get them back to full baseline, but if we can get someone who's non-functioning, unable to dress themselves, go to the toilet, do those basic things, and get them to a level where they can do those basic things, they may not be able to work and they may not be able to drive a car and they may not be able to do everything that they used to, but they can function around their own house and they can talk again and they can do interactions with their fellow human beings. That's a win, right? That's a huge win, not only for the person, but for the caregivers. As a caregiver myself, and having been in this role now for 10 years with my mum, and now she has got these disabilities where she can't move on her own, so I have to supervise her all day. She can't get up on her own since the hip break, actually. And so I know what a sacrifice it is. I know how it limits me in my professional capacity to work. I know the monetary implications of it from a business point of view, the stress on the marriage, the rest of the family, it's huge. So if you can get someone who's completely incapable back to a level of functioning within the household, that is huge for a family. So yes, we may not be able to get them from completely full dementia back to completely normal again, but we can maybe get them 4 or 5 steps back on the scale. And that, to me, is gold. When we can get people that are earlier on in the piece and they're just starting to have brain fog, they're forgetting where they put the car keys, they know they're not quite there, we can do a heck of a lot and reverse disease. And there's a doctor called Dr. Dayan Goodenow, Dayan, who I want to put on everybody's radar. I'm doing his training at the moment. He's an expert in something called plasmalogens. And plasmalogens are a particular type of phospholipid that sit in the membrane of the cells, and they're absolutely crucial to life. And when we get sick, or we get a virus, we get a bacteria, or we have an insult, our body uses these plasmalogens to put out the fire, just putting it very, very oversimplified. If we don't have a lake full of plasmalogens to draw back in from, it's like the firefighter without having a hose reel with any water in it, right? So if we're low in plasmalogens, we're not going to have good synaptic transmission in our brain. Our myelin sheaths will start to unravel. We can have problems with our heart because these plasmalogens are not only in the brain but elsewhere as well. And these plasmalogens are absolutely crucial to life. They're actually in breast milk. So breastfed infants get a lot of plasmalogens through their mother's breast milk, and this helps with their organ development. Now, as we get older, we get less and less of these plasmalogens because we've used them all up fighting different fires that we have in the body, and we can now replace them. So Dr. Dayan Goodenow has spent decades working out how do we get plasmalogens through the digestive tract and actually into the cells to replenish these reserves. And I'm, probably butchering his science nicely. So go and listen to maybe my episodes. I can share with you on it. But these plasmalogens are regrowing brain cells. They are regrowing the neurons. They are rewrapping the myelin sheaths around the nerves and the neurons. They are increasing the transmission between neurons. And he is having actual reversals of Alzheimer's, reversals of Parkinson's, reversals of multiple sclerosis, of ALS. He is, people with dementia. He is absolutely astounding. Highly recommend people go and check that out. I have my mother on high levels of these 2 types of plasmalogens. One's called Glia and one's called Neuro. And they're not cheap, unfortunately. It costs me quite a lot of money to keep her in plasmalogens. But that's one of the major factors that has saved her brain, alongside other things like peptides and hyperbaric, which we can get into in a moment. But please, people, go and check out. I've got no monetary, connection to Dr. Dayan or anything like that. I'm just passionate about his work because I've seen the results, and not only in my mother, but also with some of the clients that I work with. And it's astounding. If you look at some of his testimonials, and with cancer, that's another thing. It helps prevent the return of cancer. So once again, of course, I've got these in at high levels for my mum. So that's something I wanted to put on people's radars today because it's still relatively an unknown thing. There was a study done that he did. A 95-year-old with high plasmalogens has the same 5-year mortality rate as a 65-year-old with low plasmalogens. In other words, that's 30 years extra of lifespan that you've just gotten back. Pretty astounding. So if you can get your plasmalogen levels up, even for healthy people, I'm in my 50s, late 50s, you can prevent a lot of these things from happening, perhaps, I think it's a really good thing.
I guess, how are they administered, and is there a way to test your plasmalogen levels?
Good question. So there's a test called the Prodrome scan, and unfortunately there's not that many practitioners that are trained in it yet, but yeah, you can do a scan and it will tell exactly what is the makeup of the fats in your membranes. And your membranes are like your brains of your cell, right? They are. It's not actually the DNA that we think of as the brain. It's the membrane that's the most crucial. You could take the DNA out of a cell, the cell will survive. You take away the membrane, it's dead instantly. It's what allows things in and out And when this becomes hardened and when it becomes clogged up with cholesterol or whatever the problem is, or it has low plasmalogens, you're in trouble, and your membranes are what separate your cells within your body. Otherwise, we'd just be a big bag of fluid, right? But it's our membranes that separate these different things between the cells. So really, really crucial that these membranes are very healthy, and they're very complex. They're sort of bi-layer of if you start looking at a diagram of a cell, you'll see how complex the membrane is and the cell as well. So you take it as an oil. It's a capsule, or you can have it as a straight oil. There's one called Glia, and that really helps with the myelin sheath side of the story. And the rewrapping, if you think of it like an insulation tape around a electric copper wire, and the tape's unraveling in our brain, basically, when we get things like multiple sclerosis and any sort of neurodegenerative disease. That helps with that one. So we usually put that one in first. And then there's another one called neuro, and that sort of increases the transmission. So it's like one tunes the station and one makes the station louder, the volume louder. So we usually start with the glia and then we start with the neuro a little bit later. That's usually the way it's done. But so it's very easy, a couple of capsules a day type of thing. And high doses, you can go up to, like Mum has like 8 capsules a day of the glia and 6 of the neuro. Cost is still a factor because it is, a few $100s a month, but he's working on bringing that down. Hopefully he'll be successful because it needs to get out to more people. So, but it's a very complex process to make these things, unfortunately. And they're not available in our food chain per se. They are in things like green lip mussels and sea squirts and things, but they get digested in the digestive system, so they get broken down, whereas he's developed a way to get them through into the body without them being, so that they're reassembled back in the cell, if you like. And again, go and listen to him speak about it rather than me. But anyway, that's plasmalogen, so that's something to put on people's list. Now, that's something that I put in every single case of any brain injury, if they can.
How about hyperbaric oxygen? Do you also recommend that if someone can do it for any type of brain injury?
Oh, yes. That was the cornerstone of my mum's recovery. So I have a hyperbaric oxygen clinic. I sell them. I'm a huge fan of them. So hyperbaric is basically you're compressing the oxygen molecule. So you're on an oxygen mask. You're in a chamber that has more pressure than we are here at sea level, right? So you'd know from the divers, they use these hyperbaric chambers when they come up too fast and they get the bends, and then we stick them in a hyperbaric chamber and we bring them up slowly. Now, what they found is that when you put someone on oxygen and you go the opposite direction, you're putting them under pressure, the oxygen molecules are compressed in size, and so they dissolve into the plasma of the blood, as opposed to being attached to the red blood cell. Now, when they're on the red blood cell, they're quite a big thing. The red blood cell itself is quite big, and then it's got the oxygen molecule attached. That means it's difficult for it to cross into areas like through the blood-brain barrier, through inflamed tissue where there's inflammation and a lot of damage going on. So think about wounds, cuts, ripped ligaments, anywhere where there's inflammation or just systemic inflammation, you're often hypoxic. Hypoxic means you're not getting enough oxygen to those particular tissues, right? So one of the main things it was used for is like diabetic wounds for people that are going to lose their legs, if they don't get some oxygen delivered to the nutrients delivered to the legs that are dying because they've had damage to the blood vessels from having high blood sugars, right? Or their eyes. Now, this hyperbaric's been used for that for a long, long time, but it also helps with wound healing. It helps with tendons. It speeds up the healing process, and it lowers inflammation in the body. So it lowers all the inflammatory cytokines. It produces more stem cells out of the bone marrow. So stem cells are our cells that can go around. They come out of the bone marrow, they look for damage in the body, and then they become, I'm oversimplifying it, but they become the replacement tissue, right? So the body that you have now is not the body you had when you were 20 or the body that you had as a baby. And obviously you can see those changes, right? But as we get older, our stem cells start to deplete. We don't get as much stem cell release and so on. Hyperbaric oxygen helps release more stem cells out of the bone marrow, and that helps with the repair. So that's one of the major things. And then it can create new capillaries, like and I've seen this on a patient actually that I had who had heart issues. He actually came into the hyperbaric for a broken leg, to heal the broken leg. But later on, he had a problem with his heart. And when they looked at his heart had a blockage, but it had created blood vessels around the blockage. And that's hyperbaric, right? It's creating new roads around the block. It can do that. And in the brain, it can helps the oxygen cross the blood-brain barrier. So it goes into so the oxygen can get delivered to the damaged cells. Now, in a case like my mother's, you have areas of dead tissue in the brain. You can't do anything to save those that are gone. But the brain is very resilient and can pick up the pieces, and other players can come in to replace the A team, if you like. You've got a reserve bench. Now, often around the dead tissue is an area called the ischemic penumbra, which is just a big word saying that it's damaged areas that are still alive. The neurons are still alive, but they're not firing properly. They're not working properly. And those are the ones that we can rescue. And we can see it on SPECT scans. We don't have SPECT scans in New Zealand, but over in America, if you look at the work of Dr. Hart, she's got thousands of SPECT scans, or Dr. Daniel Amen, he also has a lot of hyperbaric, and he's done thousands and thousands of SPECT scans, which is a type of scan that shows the improvements after you've had hyperbaric, and you can see the holes in the brain disappearing, basically, where they've been re-establishing these neurons so that they're actually working together. And then what you want to do if you have brain damage is actually exercise those cells. So you will need to, do brain training and exercise and physical exercise as well. So, yeah, and when you put together a program like that, you can do extraordinary things. And I like to stack as well. Like I use hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Say someone's got a unhealing wound or a broken leg or something like that, and they're coming into the hyperbaric after they've had it, they're on their healing path, they've done what they need to do at the hospital. They come into the hyperbaric and they have session after session. You need a lot of sessions. So it's a block of sessions that you need, depending on the ailment, somewhere between 20 and 60 sessions. Like it's not a quick fix. But when they're coming in, they're speeding up that healing process. And then I like to stack it according to their nutrient profiles or their microbiome assessments and so on and so forth, with different supplements that can actually be synergistic with the hyperbaric, if you know what I mean. And then I often do red light therapy as well, because I'm a fan of red light therapy, and that works synergistically as well. So when we start to stack these things, and then there's peptides and all sorts of things that you can get into, you can have extraordinary results, really extraordinary. If you've got people that have, unfortunately, all of this costs money, right? And I wish it was democratized, and I wish that everybody had access to everything, but unfortunately we're not living in that world yet. Hopefully as things will change, that these things become more and more accessible, and they are. It used to be a heck of a lot more to buy a hyperbaric chamber than it is now. It's things are slowly coming down, but yeah, all of these things do cost. That's the one limiting factor. For people who don't have a lot of money to be able to do this, there is still things you can do, however, you just might not be able to do it all. But if you have the funds to do things, then, really, you can go to town. And it's really how much are you wanting to. The biggest thing I find, though, is mindset. If I have a person who is determined, come hell or high water, to find an answer to their problem, and they're willing to fight, I know with that person I'm probably going to get a heck of a lot further than with someone who's been dragged along by their spouse and really doesn't want to be there, doesn't know what it's about, and is not interested, and doesn't believe it. They're never going to get better, because it takes effort and it takes time. Biology is not one of these things that you fix in 2 seconds. It takes time and a concerted ongoing effort. And if there's anything I learned from ultramarathon running, it's how to do that. How to grind it out day after day after day. Be relentless.
I agree. Mindset is important. Yeah, being relentless is important. I do have a question with the hyperbaric oxygen chambers, because I dealt with chronic Lyme disease in 2018, and that was one of the options that was given to me. I actually ended up getting IV ozone, and I did like herbs and homeopathy along with the IV ozone. I didn't do the hyperbaric oxygen, but it's intriguing. And I believe they said that their hyperbaric oxygen chamber is like different than the ones like that would be at like anti-aging clinics or the ones that you would have at home. So with that one, do they mean it's like more powerful? Like, can you still get good results? I mean, apparently you get good results with a home chamber because you recommend the home chambers, but I don't know if there's an advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only difference is the pressure level that it can go to, right? And the home ones now can go up to 2 atmospheres. They've actually worked out the technology that these ones like you see behind me, the blue thing in the corner there, that's a 1.5 atmosphere chamber. The one I have in my clinic is also a 1.5, so exactly the same. And so they are as powerful. But there are 2 atmospheres, 2.5 atmospheres, 3 and above. Now, usually in the clinic setting, we might go up to 2 atmospheres. Only in the hospital setting or in big hyperbaric centres, like in Israel, where then they might go to 2.5 or 3 atmospheres. For most ailments, a 2 atmosphere is all you're ever going to need for most things. Like for cancer, it would be better to be in a 2 atmosphere than a 1.5. However, 1.5 is much more accessible for people, and it's also a safer level to go at. Once you go sort of over 2 atmospheres especially, or 1.75, I'd say, you really need to have clearance at least from a hyperbaric doctor that you are doing, because there are certain contraindications once you get up to those higher levels. And even at the 1.5 atmospheres, there are certain things that we won't do it when, for example, when you're having chemotherapy and you're actually having the chemo, we don't do the hyperbaric. And the reason being is it will make the chemo more powerful. So we don't want to do that, right? We don't want to make it more toxic, and, we want it to do its job, but not that well, that it does it more. So we don't touch that. If someone has COPD, we'd have to get special hyperbaric doctor to say, yeah, it's safe for you to come in or not. So there are certain things where we, because oxygen can be an irritant to the lungs to a small degree. There's a thing called oxygen toxicity that happens at the much higher atmospheres, sort of 2 and above, where you can get too much oxygen in too short a time, and that can cause seizures. That does not happen in the 1.5 atmospheres. And the home chambers have what's called an oxygen concentrator. So that's only taking out the nitrogen and the other bits out of the air and leaving you with about 93% pure oxygen, as opposed to 100% medical grade oxygen that you'll get in a hospital setting, right? Now, 100% is more it's more irritating. It's more in the clinic setting, you don't want to have 100%. Like the commercial drive company that I had, they had 100% oxygen because they were working with dive accidents and so on. But that they had to have specialist, like 100% oxygen is a bomb. So it needs a lot of regulation around it. When you have these oxygen concentrators, there's no risk of any of that. So it's a lot safer. So when you hear often the hospital, 2.5, 2 atmosphere clinics, they will poo-hoo the soft shell chambers because they're protecting their territory, right? And they will charge a lot more per session than the clinics that are offering the soft shell chambers that may be 1.5, maybe 2 atmospheres. And there are soft shells that now go to 2 atmospheres. And so they're protecting their territory. So take that with a grain of salt. It's the same pressure and it's going to do a lot of the same thing. Now, there is a difference between 1.5 and 2 and 2.5. And you would have a better effect when it comes to wound healing and cancer at 2 atmospheres than you will have at 1.5. But most people will only be able to access 1.5 and it will still be very beneficial. Right. So that's the only thing. Did that make sense? Because it's a little bit complex.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. So you have one at your home. Do you, besides your mom using it, do you use it just for wellness? Or like, is it like sauna? Like I go in the sauna 3 days a week, just again, not because I'm feeling bad, but to try for prevention, to increase circulation, detox. So do you do the same thing?
Absolutely. So I use it for longevity and anti-aging purposes and sporting performance and detoxification, and, 'cause it helps with all of that. And I typically do like a block 3 or 4 times a year. I might do a block of 20, and because it's, I have it in my clinic so I can use it, and I also have that one there anytime, and I rent them as well. So I can get in them at any time, and I do. So I usually do like a block of 20 and then have a break and a block of 20 and, that way, because it's better to do things in a block because you get more epigenetic changes when you're doing them close together in a block than when you're having them spread apart, if that makes sense.
How frequently do you do, like when doing a block of 20, is it like multiple times per week for the?
So I do a block of 20 and that might take me a month to do that. And then I might have a month off and then I might do another 20 or, 2 months off depending on life. But I try to do them in group, blocks of treatments. Sometimes I'll just throw in one here and there just because I want to get away from everybody for an hour and hide. There's a bit of that too. How you'll feel, you won't feel much different. So when you hop in a chamber, you'll have pressure change in your ears. So you do need to equalize your ears or you get barotrauma. So you've got to be able to equalize your ears, and that's just a matter like you do when you go up in a plane, you chew or you move your jaw and try and equalize. Otherwise, you don't feel any different, right? And you'll get out and you go, oh, was that it? But on a cellular level, these changes are happening and you're turning on and off 8,000 different genes. And when you do that repeatedly, you're getting epigenetic changes over time. Stem cell release seems to happen after about 20 sessions. So if you've got something serious, and you might want a block of 40 or 60 sessions, if you're really dealing with something like Mum was. So in the first instance with Mum, we were doing a block of 40, a month off, a block of 40, a month off, a block of 40. And that protocol in the time off is where we would see the big gains, because it's like the body catching up. It's like when you go to the gym, you don't see the gain on the day that you go to the gym. It's a week later that you start to, notice that, you were able to lift a bit more or you were able to go a bit further or whatever. And then after a couple of months, you really start to see the differences of, from going to the gym or going running or whatever. And it's the same with hyperbaric. It takes a little bit of time to get that momentum going, if you like, but changes are happening from day one, just like they are at the gym. It's just that you don't get out and go, oh, I'm Superwoman and I'm fixed.
Yeah.
So you have to believe in the process and trust the process is what I'm saying,
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm pretty sure you're the first one to really get in depth about hyperbaric oxygen on the podcast.
Yeah, my mum wouldn't be alive without it. It's that crucial, it's a cornerstone of these things, so time and time again, both for the cancer and for the healing of different injuries that she's had, the concussions that she had as she learned to walk, plus the aneurysms, all of it. It was an absolute key. And that's why I had a clinic, because I needed it for my mum.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why not open a clinic?
Makes sense. And I'll admit, when I dealt with chronic Lyme, first of all, I learned a lot about IV ozone. So I was kind of set on getting IV ozone, but also I'm not completely claustrophobic, but a little bit claustrophobic. So when they were talking about going in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber and just, if I have to get out, I'll have to alert them to get out.
You can do it yourself. Most of the chambers, you can control it from the inside. And honestly, everybody feels that the first time. And once you get over yourself that first or second time, and when you're in the clinic setting and you're in a hard shell chamber, it's a lot easier because you have a big viewing window, you have a phone, two-way phone. When you're having the soft shells, it's a little bit more because it's like being inside a pup tent. And you just have to release the pressure and you're out in a minute, or 2 minutes by the time the pressure comes down. And if you intellectually work it through, you can usually overcome that claustrophobia. And when you understand that millions of people use this around the world and, it's safe, it's worth that little bit of fear for the huge health benefits that you're going to get, But some people, we just can't get them over that hump. And that's sad. For me, it's sad because they're just foregoing something that could be super beneficial to them. But obviously, I love.
If I know I could get out on my own, I'm fine with that. If I have to rely on someone else, that's where it's. How about if someone else?
There is always a way for you to get out. All the modern day chambers, at least, have a way for you to control the things to get out. So and you shouldn't be left alone in in the room. When you're in a hyperbaric chamber, ideally we always have someone in the clinic, in the room with them, in eye contact with them, and they're able to take phones and things in there as well. They also have a two-way phone, so there's a lot of safety things that you can put into place and comfort things for people. But it is a little bit of a issue for And getting in and out is a hard thing. If you've got someone with a stroke, like trying to get my mum who was, paralyzed, and we had to get a hoist, and we had to, with the soft shells that we had back then, I had to get her in, and, it was a mission. And then I would just get her in and she'd pull the mask off. And we'd have to decompress her and open it up and put it back on and do it again, But we persevered, and so that's hyperbaric,
Yeah, I'll need to give it a try. I'll probably, I won't get one on my own yet. I'll go to like one of those anti-aging centers, try it out before I make that investment. Make sure I'm willing to
I'll send you some podcasts, and then you'll be like, okay, right. I better do it. Put it in your clinic. It's the sort of thing that you could do in your clinic as well, because it's hugely beneficial.
Yeah, that's maybe something to consider. But thank you for discussing this. If you are looking to do everything you can to save your thyroid, in addition to watching my videos on YouTube, you also might want to subscribe to my free online newsletter, which is called Healthy Gut, Healthy Thyroid. Not only will you get the latest news on how to heal your gut and restore your thyroid health, but during each edition, I'll demonstrate a different blood or functional medicine test marker that relates to healing your gut and or your thyroid. There will also be an Ask Dr. Eric section where not only can you see questions that other people have asked related to gut and thyroid health, but you can also submit a question for me to answer in a future edition. To subscribe to the Healthy Gut, Healthy Thyroid newsletter, please visit savemythyroid.com/newsletter. Also, I know you have longevity supplements, and you have an immune one that you wanted to talk about, and I want you to talk about because a lot of people listen to this have Graves, Hashimoto's, which are more immune system conditions and thyroid conditions. So if you could talk a little bit about whatever you want to talk about with your line of supplements.
Yeah, appreciate that. So when I was, once again, everything that I do is I'm looking for an answer from my mum, and she had a immune system was compromised. I mean, she's 83, and everybody's immune system, as we get older, you get something called immunosenescence, which is the aging of the immune system. And the more I researched and the more I dug into immune system, the more I understood that it's absolutely foundational to all of the diseases of aging is a healthy immune system. And it's the reason we get a lot of these things. Like cancer surveillance goes down, right? Because so you get a lot more cancers in older age because your immune system is not operating. You get more autoimmune as you get older because you've had all these insults and your immune system is confused and it starts to attack itself. And that's all in the immunosenescence. Mark that word. Senescence means that, so when we have senescent cells, these are cells that are also known as zombie cells. They're cells that are alive, but they're not replicating properly. They're not doing their normal cell life cycle. They've sort of been trapped in a bad state where they're spewing out inflammatory cytokines. They're causing systemic inflammation, and they're not doing their job. And immunosenescence is that aging of that immune system. And I studied the work of Stanford University has done this thing called the 1000 Immunomes Project, led by Dr. David Furman, who I've interviewed on the show. And his work has been for the past 15 years, and his colleagues, they have been studying the immune system. It's the largest immune system study ever done on human population. Huge study. 15 years, millions and millions of dollars gone into this project from Stanford and Buck. And what they discovered is that all of the hallmarks of aging are influenced by your immune system. So when I was looking at, longevity supplements, and I was putting in 100 different supplements, quite literally, for all of the 12 hallmarks of aging, right? To try to, cover off all your bases, if you like. And then studying this work, I'm like, actually, if we went to the immune system and we worked on a formulation that helps stop the aging of the immune system or slow it down or reverse it even, could we then influence all of those hallmarks of aging? And indeed, that is the case. So Dr. Furman and his team have identified a whole lot of proteins, and they actually have a test coming to market called the iAge test. Now, this is a test to see how well your immune system is aging, and by correlation, if you like, how you are aging, because this is the key thing. So they've identified things like CXCL9 and TRAIL and eotaxin and all these different proteins that they can measure in the blood and they definitively know how well you're doing after 15 years of this research with your aging immune system. And we started to put a formulation together, working with teams around the world that have had really special ingredients that were aimed at fixing the immune system, right? When we get older, we have this thing in our chest called the thymus gland. And when we're young, it's a huge gland in the chest. In a baby, it's huge. And this is where immune cells, T cells, get their education. They become mature T cells when they go through the thymus, and they then can become, they go out into the bloodstream and they can look for the baddies, they can look for the pathogens, the bacteria and the viruses, and they can help, mount an immune response. As we get older, that thymus involutes, which means it becomes useless. It becomes a fatty little nub. It gets a fatty infiltrate into it, and it no longer does. So by the time you're our age, it's pretty buggered. So scientists have been working on how do we replace the thymus, and we haven't yet worked out how to regrow thymuses yet. Now, there are some peptides that we can use to give back thymic function, things like thymosin alpha-1, which can be very powerful at giving you back a younger immune system, but peptides are a little bit more difficult, a little bit more inaccessible to get to. So we started working with a combination of products. So we put 4 products into a formulation that's got over 15 years worth of clinical research behind each of these ingredients, right? One is called immune defense protein, and it comes from New Zealand cows. It's an extract from the whey fraction of milk, right? So whey, we use whey a lot for bodybuilding and, muscle building, and it's great for your protein and all of that sort of stuff. But there's a tiny fraction. It's like 5% of that actual protein fraction, which is like 1 gram in every 10 liters of milk, that has a suite of 50 bioactive whey proteins that are there to protect the cow, in this case, it comes from the cow, protect it from inflammation and infection, these suite of 50 bioactives. Now, they include things like lactoferrin. Lactoferrin, if you just look up lactoferrin and what it does, it's quicker to look what lactoferrin doesn't do. It's an absolute amazing molecule that helps with iron binding, it helps with tight junctions, it helps with all manner of things, right? So lactoferrin makes up 40% of this immune defense protein. Then there's something called lactoperoxidase, and then there is a suite of 48 others. Now, the synergy of these together is much more powerful than the pure lactoferrin story, because a lot of people know about lactoferrin. There's conferences held every year on the wonders of lactoferrin, but IDP is much, much more powerful. And then we've paired that with something called Immunel, which is, again, an extract of colostrum. Now, colostrum is the first food that a mother produces, a mammal, produces for her baby. And colostrum gives the baby the immunoglobulins, the transfer factors, the growth factors for that baby to develop really quickly and get an immune system up and going, and so on and so forth. Now, human babies are born with some immunity because they get it through the placenta, but in cows, the calves are born with no immunity. If they do not get colostrum, they don't survive. So 100% their immune system is dependent on it. So we've taken this extract of colostrum. Now, colostrum has a lot of other things because it's a whole food. It's got a lot of fat, and it's got a lot of lactose and a lot of other things that we don't necessarily want as adult humans, right? So we've taken the extracts out of it, the stuff that actually does the good things for you, and put that into an extract that's going to help with your immune system. Now, it gives you back growth factors like IGF-1. It gives you transfer factors. It gives you immunoglobulins. It helps with tight junctions. It helps with gut repair. It's antioxidant, antimicrobial, antibacterial. The IDP in this together is just an absolute powerhouse. It's like colostrum times 50, much more powerful. It helps with gut integrity. So the barriers in the body, we know we have barriers right throughout our body, through our gastrointestinal tract. Everyone's heard of leaky gut. Leaky gut is absolute, as you will know as a thyroid specialist, when you have leaky gut, you are exacerbating your possibility for getting autoimmune diseases because you are letting in the bad stuff into the bloodstream, which is causing accelerated aging of the organs, damaging the brain, can lead to autoimmune and lead to all sorts of problems, right? So we want to fix those barriers and get those tight junctions tight again. That's what this formulation does, and clinically proven to do so. Then we also have 2 other ingredients. One's called carnosic acid from the rosemary plant. Now, rosemary has been used for centuries in traditional medicines, and it's a very powerful NRF2 upregulator. Now, the NRF2 pathway helps upregulate your endogenous antioxidant capacity. It's also antibacterial, antimicrobial, all of those 4 A's, antioxidant and so on. And it lowers something that the Stanford team, the 1000 Immunomes Project, identified as being one of the most important proteins in blood. Now, when this is elevated, it means you're going to have more immune problems, more cardiovascular problems. And it's a protein called CXCL9. It's a chemokine. Now, rosemary, or carnosic acid, better said, which is an extract of rosemary, helps lower that particular CXCL9 in the blood, which is a very powerful thing. The 4th component, and I could talk for an hour on each of these ingredients, but the 4th one is something called kawa. Now, this is not kava, it's related to kava, which you may have heard of from the Fijians, but kawa is a native New Zealand plant that I'm of Māori descent. I'm from New Zealand, so native population here. We've used kawa for centuries for a tonic for everything. It's one of those fix everything type of plants, but in particular for pain relief and in particular for gut health. It's a COX-2 inhibitor, so like your non-steroidal anti-inflammatories and so on, it does that without all the negative side effects. It also upregulates that NRF2, that endogenous antioxidant capacity, and it has also got all these antimicrobial and antioxidant. And it also upregulates something called interleukin-10, which is one of your anti-inflammatory cytokines that you produce in the body, which go lower as we get older. And then the other things, they all lower interleukin-6, interleukin-1 beta, and TNF-alpha and NF-kappa B. So these are all inflammatory cytokines that go up as we age. And the Stanford University project, they identified systemic chronic inflammation as being at the core of all these aging diseases and the immune system breakdown. So our formulation, which is, been done with a world-class scientific team behind this. We spent the last 2 years bringing this product to market, and it's now available. And my company is called AEVUM Labs, AEVUM labs.co.nz is the website. And I'm really excited because what we're seeing is things like you can look at your zonulin levels in a microbiome that should be going down when you're on this supplement. Things like your lymphocyte counts. Anecdotally, we haven't got a clinical evidence for this, but anecdotally, we're seeing lymphocyte counts going up. We have got clinical studies that it activates natural killer cells. Natural killer cells are the ones that go out and kill things like cancer cells and pathogens that are infected and so on. So natural killer cell activity is activated through this formulation. So, without going on forever, and because I could, this is a super powerful, really foundational supplement that's safe for nearly everybody to take. We don't give it to pregnant ladies and we don't give it to children. We're bringing out a second product that hasn't got the kawa and the rosemary, so we can give it to those 2 populations as well. But otherwise, it's very safe for someone like my mum who's elderly and fragile and comorbidities and complications. And it's what I wanted for her. And it's helping protect her from infection and helping her bounce back when she does get an infection. So recently she got a portacath infection. She had a port, which is they stick in your chest to help you take bloods and get IVs and stuff when you're older. That got infected because of the plastic in the bloodstream. Giving her Rejuvenate meant that she bounced back way faster than would be expected for someone, having had sepsis from such a really bad infection. So I was very glad to have my own product to throw in the mix. So that's it's called Rejuvenate Pro. And we're really proud of the work that's gone into it. This is really going to help people stay healthier for longer. And it is all about health span and lifespan. but most importantly, health span, so that we don't have all these dreaded diseases. So yeah, thank you for letting me share about that. I'm really, really excited about it.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And that is available not like outside of New Zealand too, like those in the United
Yes,
States and other countries.
it's coming to the United States. We have a team in the States that are getting it very, very shortly, in a few weeks' time. They don't have it yet. So if you're wanting to get any at the moment, just go to my website and hit the shop button and put in Rejuvenate or Avum Labs, and you'll see it there. That's the best way to get it. But it is coming to the States, so watch the space. It'll be there within probably about 2 months' time. So we've got a team in Colorado, Longevity Launch, who are going to be distributors in the States for it. So yeah, really excited for that.
All right, wonderful. Oh yeah, I might need to give that a try as well. And always open to trying different supplements. So.
Yeah, everybody, unless you're pregnant, everybody should be on it. And if you're over 40, then it's a no-brainer. Or if you've got autoimmune, then it's a no-brainer. If you've got health, gut issues, cellular health, immune system issues, this is the thing.
All right, wonderful. Well, I mean, you provided so much amazing information. I know we could talk for easily another hour, a couple of hours, but any last things you want to say before we tell people where they can find out more about you?
No, I just want to thank you for the work you do, because I was so glad to have a thyroid expert on my show. Like, honestly, the few and far between people who really understand thyroid, and it's something that I've been studying for the past couple of years and still haven't got my head around, because as you know, it's very nuanced. And so to have your expertise has been absolutely wonderful, Dr. Eric. So everybody, I think, you've got a good man here for you got anything thyroid and chiropractic, of course. So
well, thank you. Thank you for those kind words. I appreciate that. And same with you. Anybody, because you said you have a physical practice, so anybody in New Zealand, they could come visit you. Do you also do remote calls as well?
Yes, I do. I work with people all over the world. Yeah, I have a concierge health consultancy. Yep, for sure. So okay, people, wonderful. Just hop over to my website, lisatamati.com, and do check out the podcast and the YouTube channel, if you don't mind. I'd love people to subscribe on YouTube, and Pushing the Limits is the name of the show. Or if you're on YouTube, just type in Lisa Tamati and my channel will come up. But yeah, we get to have amazing experts like Dr. Eric all the time. So, it's an incredible privilege. You'll find that too. It's just wonderful to learn from these people, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I've listened to some of the interviews you've had, and I need to listen to more, because again, you have a lot of great guests. And your books, I assume, just go on Amazon if they want to get your books.
Actually, yes, I think a couple of them are still available on Amazon. A couple of them are a bit older now, but they're all on my website as well. So yeah, I have Running Hot and Running to Extremes were my 2 running books that I did, and then Relentless, and then the other 2 are ebooks that are available via my website, the cancer book, and another one for athletes on mindset. So yeah, so the first 3 should be on Amazon, I believe. I haven't looked for a while.
Yeah. All right, wonderful. Well, of course, I'll make sure to include all the links in the show notes. And again, thank you so much, Lisa. It was great being on your podcast, but yeah, amazing having you on mine. And this was just so much great information that hasn't been touched upon before, at least again on my podcast. So again, appreciate you taking the time, and just look forward to keeping in touch with you in the future.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.